Stanford University.
The Cantor Art Center at Stanford University.
Tonight's presentation, Gods Without Green Cards, which is a great title, by the way, Don, by Dr. Don John Cosentino, is held in conjunction with the exhibition Vodun, Vodou, Portraits of Initiates. This exhibition is currently on display in the Halpern Gallery and features work by the Belgian photographer Jean-Dominique Bourton, whose images provide intimate portrayals of Vodun priests and priestesses and their sacred shrines. This series of work is his second based in West Africa, captures intimate portrayals of Vodun priests and priestesses in a manner that shows his own personal encounter with this religion in West Africa, particularly as it plays itself out in various locations within Benin. And it brings today's public also face to face with the fascinating and captivating world of Vodun spirits, practitioners, and arts. This is a topic that, of course, is very relevant and very close to our guest speaker, Dr. Cosentino, who holds a PhD in African languages and literatures from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In 1988, Dr. Cosentino joined UCLA's cross-disciplinary Department of World Arts and Cultures as Professor of Culture and Performance. His teaching and research has focused on Black Atlantic oral narrative traditions, Afro-Caribbean studies, Afro-syncretic religions of the Caribbean, African and diasporic folklore, literature, visual and material arts, myths, rituals, and popular cultures. He's conducted extensive field work in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, in Haiti, and in Los Angeles. Since his arrival at UCLA, Dr. Cosentino has also been co-editor of African Arts Journal. This is the leading academic periodical in the discipline. But he's also been author of various other publications, including the books Defiant Maids and Stubborn Farmers, Tradition and Invention in Mende Story Performance, Vodou Things, The Art of Pierrot Barrard and Marie Casses. He's also the editor-in-chief writer of the award-winning exhibition catalog, The Sacred Arts of Haitian Vodou, and Divine Revolution, The Art of Edouard Duval-Carrie, both of which he curated at the UCLA Fowler Museum of Cultural History. As a Guggenheim Fellow in 2006, Dr. Cosentino conducted field work for a book that he's still currently working on Afro-Angelino Spiritismo. And as you sang just now, this is something that he'll probably see through his retirement. It's an ongoing project that we look forward to. Hence, it is not surprising that his various contributions to publications have covered such wide-ranging topics as botanicas and Latino popular religious arts in Los Angeles, as well as controversies surrounding the Black British artist Chris Ofili. In June of last year, the UCLA Mellon Seminar and Black Atlantic Studies Conference entitled Mumbo Jumbo, Critical Perspectives on Black Atlantic Sacred Arts, was convened in Dr. Cosentino's honor, a testament to his vast popularity among students at UCLA who have also sung his praises as a teacher and mentor since his arrival on that campus. Dr. Cosentino, who lists his religious affiliation in the ever-growing world of Facebook as a Buddhist Vodou, aka Budo. I love it, because as I was giving tours of the Vodun exhibition, that I often said it's amazing how the philosophy of Vodun really reflects the philosophy of Buddhism. So I'm so pleased to find out about this new religion that you invented, Don. But he is, of course, undoubtedly best known for his extensive research and writing on the Vodou arts, the subject of his presentation today. It's therefore a great honor to have him here at the Cantor Art Center and to hear his lecture on transformations of West African Vodou in the Vodou deities of Haiti and South Florida. So please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Don Cosentino.
I have forgotten that I claim my religious identity as Budu. I have to go back to that. I dedicate this talk to Pepla, which is the Creole term for the common people of Haiti, and to their living gods, the Loa, who rode with them from West and Central Africa during the forced migration of slavery, and persist with them through the ordeals of a devastating 21st century. In back of all my talk today, and certainly in the back of, I'm sure, most of your imaginations, is the nightmare earthquake that occurred a little more than a year ago in Haiti and affects really everything that I have to say today. It is fitting that this talk take place in the aftermath of the exhibition Vodun, Vodounon, Portraits of Initiates, curated by Jean-Dominique Bertin, since it describes what happened to all that spiritual and artistic energy after Africa shipwrecked on the shores of Hispaniola. Gonzo journalist Michael Ventura may have best described the cultural progress from the Vodun of Benin to the Vodou of Haiti. And I quote from Ventura, who used to write for the LA Weekly. Vodou is the African aesthetic shattered and then desperately put back together. In that sentence, the word desperate is the important one. More than simply put back together, it has been recreated to serve its people under the shattering impact of slavery and poverty. Vodou is not so much Africa in the New World as it is Africa meeting the New World, absorbing it and reforming the ancient metaphysics according to what it now had to face. How many metaphysics ever have been tested under such fire? Damn, that Ventura wrote well. Their cultural uniqueness is well understood by many Haitians. Consider the words of Andre Pierre, the dean of late 20th century Haitian painters. Haiti is like an accordion, he explained to me. Sometimes it's stretched very long, and sometimes it's squeezed very small. His eccentric simile seems more than apt. Indeed, for most of Haiti's history, there has been little correlation between its small size and the immoderate amount of attention an obsessed world has lavished upon it. Since 1804, most of that attention has been hostile. Haitians have been vilified as savage or mocked as incompetent, embargoed by all the usual hegemonic powers, forced to pay indemnities to France for the temerity of having emancipated itself from slavery. Haiti's national religion of Vodou is regularly dismissed as a childish farrago or as malevolent witchcraft. But that Haitian accordion has also produced discordant sounds. Throughout the 19th century, insurrections were inspired by the cry, "Remember Santo Domingo." Remember, Haiti was called Saint-Domingue under French colonial rule. So remember Santo Domingo is remember Haiti. Black Atlanticists avant la lettre, from Frederick Douglass to C.L.R. James, have sought to reframe the Haitian Revolution as the paradigm for wars of black liberation. And ever since the 1953 publication of Maya Deren's Divine Horsemen, The Living Gods of Haiti, Vodou has attracted a thin stream of committed scholars and artists eager to encounter what Alfred Métaux, the great ethnographer of Vodou, has described as the paganism of the West. What's clear in these opposing takes is that both camps see Haiti as metaphor, either as black mischief or as the paradigmatic Black Republic. What is it that makes Haiti so compelling a metaphor for detractors and admirers alike? Is it the national religion of voodoo, which establishes its own paradigm as the most maligned and thus most attractive religion in the world? Vodou is no doubt as splendid as Maya Deren records, and as intimidating as all those Hollywood zombie flicks and Baptist missionaries project. But so too are Santeria and Candomblé and the other black Atlantic religions which serve similar deities in similar ways, without attracting anywhere near the attention accorded Vodou. What I would propose is that it is not Vodou which commands attention so much as Haitian history, in which Vodou is so inextricably entangled. Whatever the historical veracity of its origin myths, what other nation claims a more dramatic history? Lightning crashing across an August sky while Mambo Cécile Fatimon stabs a black pig for Ézélie Dantot and ignites the Plan du Nord. Battalions of slaves and maroons defeating the best armies of France and England and Spain. Toussaint, victorious and then betrayed, freezing in the Jura snows. Dessalines outfoxing Napoleon, then ripping the white out of the tricolore for his granddaughter, Catherine Flon, to sew into the Haitian flag. As my Italian ancestors say, si non è vero è ben trovato, if it isn't true, it ought to be. That last tableau, the creation of the Drapeau National, was painted by Madston Montpremier on commission from the Fowler Museum for the Sacred Arts of Haitian Vodou exhibition, which I curated. Note how Montpremier has intertwined history and Vodou. While Dessalines and his soldiers stand to one side, Legba sits by the fire. So here is Dessalines, and here is Legba sitting by the fire, the old crippled Legba, whose intercession is necessary in order to open up the spiritual gates. We see the spirits hovering around in the sky, and then we see this tree of liberty with the breasts, all to be explained in a moment, so hold on. While Dessalines and his soldiers stand to one side, Legba sits by his fire, his asson or ritual rattle in hand, dressed as an officer in the Revolutionary Army. Catherine Flon sews the new drapeau, seated beside Grambois, the mapu tree with multiple breasts, a reposoir or spirit container whose limbs stretch to some divine space where angels are mermaids. And how to read those angelic mermaids. In her brilliant collection of short stories, Crick Crack, Edwidge Dantica gives us a provenance for those mystic mermaids, and I quote from Edwidge. I dreamt that I died and went to heaven. The heaven was nothing like I expected. It was at the bottom of the sea. There were starfishes and mermaids all around me. The mermaids were dancing and singing in Latin, like the priests do at the cathedral during Mass. If you want to have a couple sentences that incorporate the incredible syncretisms of Vodou, you just heard them. While many Americans couldn't differentiate Roosevelt from Reagan, alas, Haitian peasants can argue the subtleties of the 1806 plot to assassinate Dessalines at Pont Rouge. The tangles of the revolution live on as myth. In the figure of Dessalines, many Haitians discern the excesses and fate of the Duvaliers. The treacherous kidnapping of Toussaint by Napoleon foreshadows the treacherous kidnapping of Jean-Bertrand Aristide by Bush and Powell. These paradigms were established in the 18th century, and like all living myths, they continue to express themselves through the work of contemporary artists. Of particular note, because they carry such radically different tales of Saint-Domingue into the 21st century, are the paintings of Edouard Duval-Carrie and of his predecessor, Andre Pierre. In mythic terms, the comparison of these artists carries on the binaries of the revolution. Bourgeois and habitant, Frank Guinet and Jean de Couleur. I photographed Andre Pierre in the compound in Croix de Mission with Rodney Flambert, his agent from Le Centre d'Art, standing by his side. Note the portrait on his easel. It is Ogun and Érzélie Danto, dressed in Saint-Domingue finery, ready to lead the divine charge in battle. Because in the mythology of Vodou, while Dessalines and Toussaint were leading the earthly battalions, it was the Loa, the divinities, led by General Ogu, whose predecessor is on beautiful display upstairs in the photograph gallery on Vodou, known in Benin as Gu, the great general of all the Black Atlantic armies, and by his side the indomitable peasant woman Érzélie Danto, who is the Loa patron of all hardworking women, whether they're in the country or urban proletariat. She is now the patron of welfare mothers in New York City, and is so furious at their fate that when she possesses, she cannot even speak. She is so angry that all she can do is go da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because her fury is so great at the fate that she and all of her sisters have had to put up with. Although he rarely left his compound, Andre Pierre was Haiti's most cosmopolitan artist of the last half-century. His paintings and religious objects continued to be avidly sought by museums and private collectors in America and Europe. He began his career in the 1950s, during what art historians now term the Haitian Renaissance, that heady post-war period when a number of Haitian artists, encouraged by DeWitt Peters and his collaborators at Le Centre d'Art, began translating their visions of the Loa, or divinities, into the non-traditional medium of oil paint. No one made that translation more comprehensively or more dramatically than Andre Pierre, as is evident in his painting of the entire Vodou pantheon, arrayed as if for a family portrait at their lush compound in La Ville aux Camps, or the City of Camps, the Olympus, or perhaps more appropriately, the Versailles of the Vodou divinities. If you think of all of those splendid portraits, those diptychs upstairs, and the priests standing next to or sitting next to the various Vodou who they serve in Benin, now reimagine that in the context of Haiti and how they are all reassembled, but as divinities who are also royalties. And notice that the costumes they wear, excuse me, the costumes that they wear are in fact the costumes of the royalty that were disappropriated when the French were driven out of Haiti. Pierre's paintings depict the Loa in apotheosis, black and brown gods and kings assembled in stately rank around Ogu, military commander of the Pantheon, and Érzélie Danto, earth goddess and matron of the revolutionary armies that free Haiti from slavery and French colonial domination. Andre Pierre paints his gods in ball gowns, sashes, epaulettes, and tiaras, costumes appropriated from the slave masters who were killed or driven from Haiti after 1804. Vodun's appropriation of these colonial trappings, costumes of the slave masters, ritual gear of Freemasonry, and various signifiers of the Roman Catholic saints, marks one of the great and consistently underrated transformations in religious history. I often spoke with Andre Pierre about his paintings, his religion, and his country, topics which always seem to converge into a seamless, if cryptic narrative in which Haiti was a kind of new Zion. The terms of his discourse could sound startlingly close to the world as understood by Rastafari. And now I quote from Andre Pierre. There are two nations in the world that got their independence in the same conditions. Those two nations are Haiti and Israel. The people of Israel got their independence with the blood of the Lamb. They committed their crime in the gully of the Red Sea. The Haitian people got their independence with the blood of the pig. They committed their crime in an area called La Ravine à Couleuvre, the Canyon of the Snakes. These are two nations who became independent in the same way. The people of Israel call their culture Vodou, that is, the golden calf. The people of Haiti call theirs Vodou. These nations, Haiti and Israel, got their independence through bloodshed and crime, therefore allowing other nations, other people, to become free as they are. I bet you haven't heard that explanation before. I recorded Andre Pierre's words during conversations we had under the great shade tree in his enormous compound. At the back of the compound were several substantial buildings housing altars to the Loa he served. For in addition to being an artist, Pierre was also a ganga, which is to say an initiated priest of the pantheons he painted. His altars were heaped with detritus of modernity preferred by the Loa, bottles of rum and champagne, cigarettes, perfume, plaster statues of the saints, and plastic crucifixes. Altars as complexly structured and impossible to classify as the man who made them. It was visually apparent from his altars that the artist's art and philosophy spanned not only this world, but planets and constellations beyond. We could, of course, groove for the rest of this time just on that painting, but I have to force you on because you're going to have your examination in half an hour. At the core of Andre Pierre's Weltanschauung was the religious primacy of Vodou. For this is what he proclaimed, this is what Andre Pierre proclaimed. Vodou has always existed. It existed before Jesus Christ because when you are talking about miracles, you are talking about magic. God says miracle, Guédé, which is what Africa is constantly called in Haitian discourse. Guédé says magic. God says prophet, Guédé says ungan. We call that earthly spirit Vodou, but every nation in the world gives it a different name. The Americans may give it a different name, the French may give it a different name, but they are talking about Vodou. They are worshiping the Vodou of Haiti. It is like the sky. Every nation gives it a different name, but there is only one sky for everybody. And as he further explicated, it was Vodou which directly inspired the terrestrial revolution, which was simultaneously a divine revolution. I'm talking about the revolution of 1791 to 1804. This is what Andre Pierre said. Vodou allows you to walk with your head held high. Religion makes you walk with your head low. You can fight any war. All men are warriors. But with religion, no. Men are slaves. It is always yes, yes. You don't have the right to say anything but yes to everything they tell you. Slaves of slaves. I could remember him sitting there. Esclaves d'esclaves. Slaves of slaves. You don't have a personality. But with Vodou, you keep your personality. I want or I don't want. But in religion, there is neither I want nor I don't want. That's what personality is, the return of the Guédé spirits. Andre Pierre imagines the Loa demobilized, returning to Africa, as you see in this portrait, after successfully winning the War of National Liberation and establishing a new Zion for their children in Haiti. But once again, let Guggenheim Pierre explain. Quote, after the War of Independence in 1804, the Guédé spirits returned to Africa, led by the Star of the Messiah, the Holy Cross, the Lion of Judah's tribe, the Roots of David. Ogou returned with a red and blue flag, and the woman saint brought the Congo paquet. Ogou took away the white and left a bicolore. He took the white away from the French flag. He said, I am going to give this land back to you, and I am going home. Then he sang this song. I am going back on my big horse. The river brought me and will take me back. 2 feet and 2 arms led my horse. My bags are packed and tied, and my flag is deployed. My bongo is on my back. Forward, riflemen. In his praise song of Ogou, we should note the claim that the final military victory of the Haitian Revolution at Vertier and its ratification on January 1st, 1804, is all the work of the gods. It is Ogou, who is also known in Haiti as Saint-Jacques or Saint James, who led the divine armies, first against General Leclerc and Emperor Napoleon, and then, after the demobilization of the divine armies, back across the Atlantic to Africa. Where then are the fleshly heroes of the revolution in the work of Andre Pierre? Where is Toussaint Louverture? Where is Jean-Jacques Dessalines? How is it that they are now disparus, merged into their archetypes of Ogou, just as the revolution has moved out of history and into the paradigms of African Atlantic myth? In this and all his paintings, Andre Pierre imagines a universal paradigm for black wars of liberation, a vision retransposed into history by C.L.R. James and other champions of the black Jacobins. Now, let us cut to Edouard Duval-Carrie. Oops. 2 generations and several worlds removed from Andre Pierre. Edouard comes from a bourgeois background, having studied art at the École des Beaux-Arts in France and lived and worked in Canada, Puerto Rico, and now in Miami. Despite the obvious social and class differences, there are surprising correspondences between the sophisticated young painter and the old artist shaman. For instance, both artists chronicle Haitian history through the scrim of its mythology. Consider Duval Carrie's self-conscious description of that process. And now I quote from Edouard. "My paintings are chronicles. Haiti is a country of people who are unfortunately illiterate, and my image is essential. They have a knack to convert so much into one image. Every work of art from Haiti is either a chronicle of history or a very strong statement about aspirations or frustrated aspirations." Both artists are also visually rooted in Haiti's bizarre 18th century. For Pierre, it is a question of appropriating the rigid hierarchies of Saint-Domingue for the glory of Vodou's black gods and kings. Duval Carrie's game is to explode those same hierarchies, revealing the tissue of lies which sustain them. Beneath his bright surfaces, Duval's paintings are X-rays of a pornographic society. Literally so. They are positioned like mirrors on the ceiling of a bordello, whose horrors mimic the manners of genteel society, visual equivalents of Jean Genet's mincing bishops and strutting generals in the balcony. Duval Carrié painted a series of historical tableaux for an exhibition mounted at the Paris Musée National des Arts Africains et Océans in 1989. The theme of the exhibition was the French Revolution in the tropics, which is to say in those states of the Black Atlantic which were colonies of France at the time of its 1789 revolution. As Duval Carrié's paintings remind us, that famous revolution took on different shapes and colors if you were black or brown and did not live in the metropole. Duval Carrié's images the effects of the French Revolution as they were played out in Saint-Domingue, whose African slaves and mulatto freemen fought their own parallel revolution for emancipation and the establishment of the world's first black republic and the only one to free all its citizens. Duval Carrié paints all the ranks of this excruciatingly stratified society. Slaves and slaveholders, officers and soldiers, wives and mistresses, and towering above them all, alone and apart, the great hero of the Haitian Revolution, General Toussaint Louverture. Duval Carrié paints his characters in bold primary colors, each standing alone and staring at us as if obliged by the artist to pose in some sort of surreal lineup. Characters arranged into a perverse iconostasis, whose inverted saints dumbly show forth their sins. For indeed, if there ever was a society whose sins cried to heaven for revenge, it was colonial Saint-Domingue. By comparison, Sodom and Gomorrah look restrained. the richest colony on earth and a torture chamber for African slaves, a bordello for black and colored women whose horror masters minced in lace at the opera and theater, a nightmare society on a paradisical island, a fluorescence of sugared corruption Jesus denounced as whited sepulchres. 15 years later, Duval Carrié revisited these tableaux, this time to honor the bicentennial of Haitian independence proclaimed by Louverture's successor, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, on January 1st, 1804. For this commission, he cartooned the same scenes of Saint-Domingue onto fabrics, which were then sewn by the atelier of Jean-Louis Edgar, one of Haiti's most famous sequin artists, into what looked like new versions of the ritual Vodou flags or drapeaux, elaborately iconic flags used to salute the Loa at the beginning of Vodou services. One of these drapeaux he called Roman Noir à Saint-Domingue. Like much of the artist's work, Roman Noir depicts the bizarre geometry of 18th century colonialism in Saint-Domingue on the eve of the greatest slave revolt in history. Here are the dramatis personae of that most artificially constructed of all societies, the grand and petite blanc, rich and poor whites, the mulâtresse, the mulatto mistress, and the black slave négresse, all frozen in rigid juxtaposition, all locked into position by the code noir or black code, which defined everyone in the colony by excruciatingly precise measures of color. There is, however, enough free-floating melanin in these portraits. Look again at the color and features of the whites to make us wonder at these prescribed distinctions. Unacknowledged in the composition is the black male whose forced labor sustains these racial categories. Is he out toiling in all that lush vegetation we spy through the open doors of the big house, kept in check by the whip in the hand of the petite blanc? Also missing is the white woman, except as an ideal painted and hanging on the wall. She has been replaced by the sexual surrogate mulâtresse, just as the work of the house has fallen on the négresse. The title of the painting, reminiscent of Hollywood film noir genres of the 30s and 40s, suggests that beneath all the rigidities of this composition lies a tangle of exploitation and deceit. That dirty little secret is revealed in Colons et Châtiments, Colonialists and Punishments, a revelatory coda of painted scenes that completes the diptych. This quartet of scenes reveals the political economy of Roman Noir. People of color who own the mansion and the punishments they impose on the black slaves who work it. The linkages tell the story. There would be no silks and wigs for the colons without the terror that they have imposed on the staked man and the chained woman. This is the geometry of the revolution and the secret at the heart of the Roman Noir, which reads, Duval Carrié says, like, quote, like a Garcia Marquez novel, where the doom factor reaches such abysmal proportions that you might as well just laugh. And what relevance do these scenes from a long ago colony about to explode have for the bicentennial of Haitian Revolution? Edouard explains, quote, read the chronicles of the 17th and 18th centuries in Haiti, and it's as if you are reading about it today. It is a country that's split. The majority is black. You have an upper class, which is all the colors of the rainbow, but they have an attitude which is bringing out the problems that you have now. You have a post-colonial society, and what was there in the colonial times is what is there today. Nothing has changed. Reinforcing this concept of reversible time, art critic Charles Merriweather astutely observed, Duval Carrié's canvases are filled with figures who appear to walk straight out of 18th century France. The pomp and splendor is not portrayed as solely a thing of the past, but the language and rhetoric that stand as signs for the aspirations of the contemporary elite in Haiti. The elite of Haiti live out their lives in a dazzling melange of 18th century Versailles, the 19th century Paris of Baudelaire, and the late 20th century Miami. This is also the painted world that Toussaint Louverture inhabits, with all the splendors and irony Duval Carrié paints in his sequined banner. That gilded African Napoleon scornfully called Louverture. But here he is with his name in gold letters unfurled across the sky, and his gold buckle, riding crop, epaulets, and earring. Gilded indeed, and like so many African heroes, a man of many ways. Note his Republican garter in tricolor, bracing white hose, and slippers appropriated from Versailles. Toussaint is clutching Haiti's first constitution, while his slipper crushes the head of a serpent. A symbol of the evil ancien regime, perhaps, or of Dambala, serpent Loa older than all the regimes and all human beings. Then there is the Toussaint of Haitian urban legend. Toussaint, son trésor à l'étang caïman. Toussaint and his treasure in the swamp of the crocodiles. Haiti is a land of buried treasures. Where did all that fabled wealth of Saint-Domingue go? Haitians often ponder. So divers plunge for sunken treasure where pirates hugged the coast. Diggers shadow abandoned mansion grounds where fleeing colonials surely buried silver and gold. And Toussaint Louverture, what treasures must that greatest of heroes have sunk into the pond of crocodiles, the étang caïman? Note the treacherous caïman guard his treasure, just as they guard the bois caïman, where legend says the Haitian Revolution began during a great Vodou ceremony in 1791. Finally, there is the Toussaint of myth, or as Edouard calls him, Toussaint enfumé, Toussaint lost in smoke. He is a contradictory hero. Like Odysseus, he is a refined trickster, or as Haitians might say, master of the crossroads. Duval Carrié paints his profile inside a foliard locket, a black dandy in the full-dress uniform of the revolutionary armies of France. Toussaint is an elegant manifestation of Vodou, now looking pretty in pink. He is a man of Africa who fought for Saint-Domingue and died in France. Slave and freeman, child of the Enlightenment and fervent Catholic who served the Loa. In short, Louverture is the quintessential Haitian. And move over George Washington and Napoleon Bonaparte, the first leader of a modern war of liberation. But, as Edouard notes with some melancholy, we can no longer see that Toussaint, the man of many ways, for he is enfumé, lost in the smoke of myths. And what of the Loa, who Andre Pierre understood as the divine aristocrats? Edouard is quite eloquent about those divinities of today. And I quote from Edouard, "They are the true representation of the people, and for me, they are the soul of the people. The whole pantheon is created in the image of man. First of all, they are there to provide for the people and to help the people and to be part of them. They look like them too. Of course, I put my imagination into it because there is a lot of fantastic activity. But basically, I'm talking about the Haitian people when I paint the spirits and their capacity for being more than they really are." For more than a decade, Edouard has painted the Loa in various stages of migration, from Africa to Haiti in slavery, and from Haiti to the United States, often in desperate flight. These divine trajectories mirror the seemingly endless migrations of the Haitian people depicted in this painting, Migration from Guinea. Packed like boat people in a flimsy craft, the Loa have set sail from Benin or Congo, the Guinea of the slave trade. Note the skull of Bossou on the prow of the ship, triple-crowned bull divinity. Grand Bois, the great tree, you remember that portrait of Grand Bois in the first painting of Dessalines creating the flag. Well, note where Grand Bois is here now in the back of the ship. Grand Bois' sprouted arms are pointing downwards toward his African children drowned in the middle passage. Guédé, who is the great divinity of death and sexuality, his skeletal arm also bends down from his raffish clamshell gown, while his mirthless father, the Baron Samedi, in top hat and black leaves, stares indifferently out to sea. The question mark painted on the ear of Simbi, you see Simbi next to Bossou in the front of the ship. The question mark painted on the ear of Simbi, water spirit seated in the bow, indicates an uncertain itinerary for these divine migrants as it does for their human children. Vodou iconography has few fixed forms. The Loa can manifest in dolls, bottles, chromolithographs, or trees. They can burst forth from the bodies of their servitors, as the slimy monster burst forth from the body of John Hurt in Alien. Or indeed, they can be grand seigneurs in Andre Pierre's 18th century Heaven. The Loa are like the Greek god Proteus. Grab them and they metamorphose. Seize Zaka and he's Saint Isidore. Lay a trap for Dambala and he's Saint Patrick chasing the snakes from Ireland. The Baron Samedi can be Bela Lugosi or Darth Vader. Such variability has left Edouard and many Vaudouisans free to reconceive of any Loa, a prerogative he clearly relishes. And I quote, "Vodou has no canons yet, real established ones, and you are encouraged to be totally free and make images that are totally wild." In Edouard's work, we see what the Loa look like now. Since they adorn new costumes, the artist redresses them, though not always in the latest fashion. Flash forward hundreds of years to Erzélie Freda, who's the kind of vamp of the Vodou pantheon. She's the kind of party girl. She's the Lady Gaga of the pantheon. I would have said Madonna a few years ago, but my students are keeping me hip to the references I need to make. But notice that this Erzélie Freda is detained by a couple of hunky INS officers in Ray-Bans. Have they stopped a goddess on her way to Florida? "Where's your green card, ma'am?" they seem to be asking her. She looks bewildered by their rudeness. Like Blanche Dubois, she has always counted on the kindness of strangers and their loving gifts of champagne, perfume, and cigarettes. Perhaps her glamour no longer appeals. Her gown belongs to 18th century Saint-Domingue, not to chic Miami Beach. And that poor ingenue is barefoot. The tears she sheds at so many Vodou services are to no avail. No wonder that sword is poised to pierce her heart. She's self-deluded in her ratty prom dress from aardvarks, voguing like some ballroom transvestite in Jenny Livingston's Paris is Burning. Believe me, if you think my references are eclectic, Edouard has seen all these movies. How did Edouard construct this poignant Erzélie? Has he grabbed her hooped gown from Andre Pierre or from Scarlett O'Hara? Her halo incorporates a sword from the lithograph of Mater Dolorosa, which Vodou associates with Erzélie Freda. But she has a baby tied at her waist. Her niece Anaïs, perhaps, since for Freda, the courtesan, having a baby is bad for business. But in truth, iconic consistency is irrelevant. Divine inspiration is the artist's privilege, as Edouard explained. I was very interested in Renaissance painting and also interested in Vodou. But I had studied very little Vodou, and I have never seen anything like a portrait of the deities. So I decided to give them their final full flesh type of pictures so that people would recognize the Loa from their attributes. The Loa, however, are more than icons. They are manifestations of the peuple haïtien, or pepla, who I referenced at the beginning of this talk. As Edouard once again makes plain, the Loa represent basic humanity. It's a projection into the universal of human frailties or human fears. It's like a synthesis of what we are all about. My characters are not like Christian gods, omnipotent and perfect. They are more like Roman gods who had frailties, and they love and hate and punish and get punished. I have put this whole cast of gods as boat people, living in Haiti or here in Miami, trying to adapt, gods being common people. So that is Edouard's final vision, the Loa as boat people setting sail in a fragile bark from some obscure cove on the Haitian coast. This is a situation Edouard does not celebrate. Even spirits are leaving an island mired in fatal desperation, fleeing the legacy of leaders Edouard has described as running the gamut from operetta emperor to demented shaman. The migration of the gods to Miami has become the magical mystery tour, with the grand seigneurs of the Pantheon washed up on some grassy knoll overlooking the causeway to Miami Beach. In this 1997 painting, the last of a trilogy Edouard calls The Migration of Crossing, the Loa are safely landed for now, tossed onto some grassy knoll overlooking the causeway. Congo Makaya, robed in his healing leaves, is staring cross-eyed at his fellow divinities, including two Guédés, one a sickly green skeleton in purple cloak and top hat, the other costume for carnival in umber cape and canonical hat. Is he a witch, a dunce, or both? There's the snake god Dambala, blue as Krishna, next to his consort golden Aida Wedo, whose head has exploded into a corona of Chinese characters. Erzili Freda is swaying like Carmen Miranda down by the beach. What a motley crew of boat people. Boat gods, washed up revelers on Ash Wednesday morning. Are these bizarre divinities an advance party for the whole Vodou pantheon, or some remnant of les invisibles still at home in Haiti? These Loa are a pretty motley crew, for gods that is. They seem like some colorized version of a Diane Arbus print. One of her latter prints of asylum people in Halloween costumes aimlessly wandering around a vacant lawn. Edouard's Migration of Crossing reminds art historian Edward Sullivan of another great rendition of the migration theme. In Das Rheingold, the first operetta of Richard Wagner's great tetralogy, The Ring of the Nibelung, the composer traces the migration of the gods from one home to another, from one realm of the spirit world to their new home in Valhalla. Each of the Norse gods possesses positive and negative qualities, and throughout the operatic cycle, Wagner underlines and analyzes their virtues and their faults. In his latest series of paintings and sculptures, Edouard Duval-Carrie does much the same thing. Both artists are in many ways similar. The Loa of Vodou are just as powerful to vast sectors of Haiti today as the old German divinities were to the populace of their time. While the vitality of the ancient European gods has died out, that of the Vodou pantheon continues to exert an emphatic effect on the people who worship them. Edouard Duval-Carrie thus joins an excellent company of world artists who have mined local myths for their own productions. The list is illustrious and very long, going back to the Greek and Roman poets or visually to Renaissance artists from Botticelli to Caravaggio, who painted antic gods and Christian saints with equal passion and brilliance. For closer examples, one might include artists of the so-called Haitian Renaissance, such as Hector Hippolyte or Rigaud Benoit, who painted the Loire in the form of Catholic saints or French dandies, or bathing beauties in red bikinis, or indeed of Christ himself. These are the artists who frescoed Bible scenes on the vault of Sainte Trinité Episcopal Cathedral in Port-au-Prince, affecting monuments to both Christianity and Vodou until their collapse in the catastrophic earthquake of January 12th, 2010. But Edouard does not belong to this group of artists. He is studio trained, and they are not. They were born and raised within the tradition of serving the Loire. He was not. Intellectually, Duval Carrié is closer to a tiny handful of bourgeois admirers of Vodou, such as Milo Rigaud, who sought to redeem the religion from its detractors through comparative analyses with other world mythologies. Rigaud engages theosophy, solar mythology, gnosis, tarot, the Kabbalah, Hinduism, and the rainbow of parallel New Age inspirations to adumbrate the mythology of Vodou. His work has been extremely influential. Many urban Vodou temples are now covered in Kabbalistic imagery, which can be traced back to his influential Secrets of Vodou, published in 1953. What Rigaud bequeaths to later generations of Haitian intellectuals is the conflation of Afro-Caribbean deities with a nearly incalculable array of cosmopolitan mysticisms. Duval Carrié is as eclectic, not to say promiscuous, as Rigaud in his appropriation of mythic imagery. But with Edouard, there is no bourgeois tropism for New Agery. He's too ironic for that. And I would argue that this is the eclecticism of Vodou itself. He is more than mining the religion for imagery. He is meeting it on the common aesthetic ground of assemblage. His paintings are overproduced in the same way a Vodou altar is overproduced. Spilling over with signs and signals the painting itself can hardly contain. This is the aesthetic of Vodou, the Black Atlantic aesthetic of layering. It is instructive to compare Andre Pierre's triumphalism with Edouard's apocalyptic visions. Ponder Edouard's assessment of the significance of this latest divine migration to Miami Beach. The spirits are jumping ship and leaving the island. They might look like cartoon characters, but really it's very sad that Haiti is losing its soul. And after 200 years, the island is still unable to cope with the legacy of slavery and its emancipation. We are still rehashing the same kind of dialectic we have for the past 2 centuries. Within Haiti, I am very subversive. They think I am totally crazy, but that is my aim, to let it be known how complex Vodou is and how rich it is, but also that these spirits are leaving Haiti. Conflicting tales of triumph and tragedy. These are the double legacies of Saint-Domingue and the Haitian Revolution, so dramatically apparent in the art of Andre Pierre and Edouard Duval-Carrie. Thanks.
Thank you. We'd like to open up for some questions.
Yes, sir.
You touched on the political structure of current-day Haiti. Could you comment on how this has affected the progress in reconstruction from the earthquake?
The National Palace collapsed, which is the presidential palace. It would be the equivalent of if that plane that had crashed in Pennsylvania had actually hit the White House, the kind of psychic damage that it would do to the U.S. But in point of fact, Haiti is not the U.S. It does not have strong institutions. And when that National Palace went down, as did the National Cathedral, as did the Palace of Justice, Haiti was left without defining institutions. And the president, René Préval, works out of a tent in the back of the National Palace and has not really been able to coordinate the kinds of relief that's been pouring into Haiti in a kind of a random way, it seems to me, over the last year. So that, in point of fact, the dilemmas that I touched on in quoting the artists whose work I admire and presented to you today, is really a dilemma that it persists and that has prevented the recovery of Haiti from being what it ought to be. I have no words of consolation except to say that the Haitian people are extraordinary, and though I cannot see how, in what specific ways things are going to get better, I have an enormous belief in the people themselves, and so refuse to despair, though there's many reasons to despair.
Are the elite living closer to their original state before the earthquake than
Yes.
the common people?
Yes, as usually happens, God is a very unfair dealer, and the elite areas were really not struck well. It's really a sort of matter of going up, isn't it? The poor folk live on the bottom, not unlike the LA that I live in. If you live in Bel Air and you live in Beverly Hills, it's likely that you belong to the same class as the people who live in the flats. But in Haiti, the flats were inhabited by pepla, and they were much more devastated than the hills. And so very few of the elite areas were really seriously damaged, except for the incredibly beautiful port town of Jacmel. There the damage was terrible across class lines. Yes?
I recently saw a Smithsonian magazine, or Take Smithsonian magazine, and it had a cover article on art that was coming out of the earthquake. And I was really heartened to see the creativity that's still there for the Haitian artists. Could you comment on that just briefly?
There's been a dialectic in Haiti that goes something like this: the worse the circumstances, the better the art. During the horrible days of the Duvalier dictatorship in the late 50s to the late 80s, some of the greatest art, not just of Haiti, but of the New World, was being produced. I was just in Haiti in November, before I had my hip operation, which got me that incredible cane, which I have up there. And the art production I saw was just fantastic. But it was reflective, and I'm not talking in an actual painting scenes of the earthquake, so much as realizing figures of the Loire as gigantic and incomprehensible. The outrageousness of the Loire is beginning to dominate in their representations. They're making statues of Guédé and the Baron Samedi, who are the gods of death and regeneration, out of truck chassis that are 20 feet tall. Just enormous figures with enormous phalluses, and sort of way beyond the dimensions of human comprehension. Because this earthquake was beyond the dimensions of comprehension. The destruction is so awe-inspiring and so awful that I've heard Haitians, Vodou priests and priestesses who I know well, say, well, the gods themselves were terrified by what happened, that they themselves fled the scene, that there is a power older than them. But the gods are not infinite. The gods are, it's just as the Vodou in the portraits upstairs, or the Loire that you've seen today and the illustrations I brought. These are secondary agents. The great God is an unknown God, and his ways are unknown to the Loire as they are to the Vodou. And so this destruction is something for which people do not have an explanation. Yes. Oh.
I was curious about something in both of the artists' practices, which has to do with ethical considerations. So for the first artist,
Andre Pierre,
following in a tradition somewhat like Edouard Duval-Carrie being an expert in Vodou, I'm curious about what the consumption is of those paintings that he produces, because as these Loa are not presented in a way that they can actually be actively worshipped, I'm curious, how are these paintings consumed and how are they circulated on the market? And then also, with the case of Edouard Duval-Carrie and the series that he does of Haiti pre-revolution, I guess it just seems very ironic given that he is in a social status, in a social sphere that he has greatly benefited from that system and is continuing to benefit from it.
Isn't it awful that the world is full of such contradictions? Edouard would be the first person to say that he's a bourgeois. But you know that description of Haiti as 80% Catholic and 20% Protestant statistic, which is no longer relevant because really you have to take the Pentecostals into view now, and they're much larger than 20%. 80% Catholic, 20% Protestant, 100% Vodou. Which is to say, if you're bourgeois, you're going to use Vodou in a different way. You're going to use Vodou perhaps in a secretive way. You know, when the cancer is really not being addressed by radiotherapy or chemicals, then maybe it's going to be addressed by Erzeli Danto, and you're going to seek out a Bokor. What I'm trying to say is that the bourgeois are not isolated from the Vodou. And maybe it helps him to see the Vodou in a different way. Maybe it helps him to see them in the party dresses and so forth. No, the consumption for his stuff is an international market. But that's been true of Haiti since the end of World War II, when the so-called Haitian Renaissance began, because it introduced new art forms. Before DeWitt Peters started, who was an American, who went over as a conscientious objector to Port-au-Prince in the 1940s and set up a cooperative, the Centre d'Art. And Andre Pierre was one of the first people who participated in the cooperative. Up until that time, Haitians were unfamiliar with the genres of oil painting. He gave them materials. He did not tell them what to paint. He did not show copies of other people's work, but he produced the materials that allowed them to create visions which hadn't existed previous to their work. No, these kinds of illustrations don't show up in Vodou temples. Even in Andre Pierre's temples, you know, it was still the old Catholic holy pictures. And I asked him one time about that, and he said, the gods like old stuff. They don't really like the new stuff that I'm doing.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.